Welcome to another episode of X's and O's. And this isn't a regular Joe. This is a guy right here who this is probably one of the most high profile guests that I've ever had an opportunity to speak with and be on with. We're talking to Will Knight, a former OSU alum, former OSU wrestler, and also, more importantly, a candidate for Congress, the U.S. Congress, in District 11 here in Cleveland, Ohio, mainly the metropolitan area of Cleveland, a little part of Akron. Will, thanks so much for reaching out to me, and I'm so glad to have you on today. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. Thanks for having me, man. Big fan.
Hey, listen, I think you reached out to me, and I'm a big proponent of the civil duties. I'm a big proponent on figuring out what's going on in the community and how we can go about helping our community in lots of different ways. Talk to me a little bit about your journey to starting your campaign and actually going into Congress, and what brought about that, the will to do civic duty and to run for Congress.
Well, I like to tell a little bit of the backstory where, my parents are from Alabama. They met at Miles College in Fairfield. And my dad moved up to Akron, and my mother went to grad school at Columbia in the late 50s. She got her master's degree in education. And my dad became the first Black man to work in a bank who wasn't a custodian in Ohio. And then when he moved from Akron, three of my siblings were born in Akron. They moved to East Cleveland. My dad had a good banking job. And what he was doing was securing loans for, primarily like upstart African-American businesses. He was trying to, help people to get started in businesses. And my mother was teaching. And, from that point, after they left East Cleveland, moved to Shaker, where me and my other siblings were born. I'm the youngest of 7. And we're all graduates of Shaker Heights High School, and we all went to college. And what I learned is, after my dad left the banking industry due to other things, circumstances, the industry kind of turned on him. He went into contracting and just taught us how to get up and work. And he always had concerns about the community. He always loved the African-American community and he was always worried about the future of it. And it always stuck with me. And then when I went to Ohio State, and then these things came about with the issues with our doctor, what has happened is, I don't know if you know or your audience knows, our assistant coach was current Congressman Jim Jordan. And with this lawsuit against Ohio State, what I've learned is he turned his back on us pretty much and helped splinter the group and played some politics with it. And all the other people that I reached out to, Democrats and Republicans, from Tim Bryan to Mike DeWine to Nina Turner, Shontel Brown, Shirley. There's people that I've reached out to, city council members, state reps. Only one got back to me, and that was my state rep. And she said something that stuck with me. She said, "Government's supposed to work for you, not against you." And from that point, that stuck with me. And then when this opportunity arose, and they talked about the inevitability of certain candidates winning, I just looked at myself. I said, that can't be the case. I know the history of this seat with Lewis Stokes, and my siblings going to school with, Carl Stokes' son. And my brother was a congressional page for Lewis Stokes back in the late 80s. I know the importance of this seat. And I just knew people need to be challenged to earn this, because we've been letting too many people get away with just not working for the community, taking these spots and just cruising in them. And I just said, you know what, we need to hold these people to account.
So we talk about this all the time. Politics is sort of a little bit of a dirty word, and you're not supposed to really talk about it. But you, as being an athlete who went through something that was, horrendous, and one of the biggest scandals, I would say, in the entirety of sports, at least in the wrestling, and in the wrestling sport. You've been able to, attack, and you've been able to bring up some of the things that have been missing based on what happened to you at the university, or Ohio State University. Jim Jordan, Congressman Jordan, for the state of Ohio, he was part of that coaching staff. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And take me into some of the things and the findings with your story, and walk people through your story with the coach and the scandal.
So when I got down to Ohio State, I was a tryout walk-on because I wrestled. I didn't make it to the state tournament, but I knew my journey wasn't done with wrestling. So I went through all the motions to get on this team. I actually had wrestled at this tournament called the Ohio Open. I actually did better than probably 90% of the freshmen. So I get on the team. And coincidentally, Jim Jordan was the one that probably told me, he's like, yeah, we're probably going to let you on the team. And as we go through this journey, when you see the doctor, I can just go right into how the physicals happen. And all the athletes from football, every athlete, we all go over to this place called Biggs, where the football team practices. Woody Hayes facility is a thing called Biggs. And they had this this gauntlet of where you get your mouthpiece fitted, you get your heart rate checked, boom, etc. And then you have a room where Doc Strauss checks you out to give you your hernia and other. So what it turns into a way inappropriate physical. It's way longer. It's way inappropriate. It's when you got your hernia checked, what they do. Hey, look, everyone's uncomfortable. Look left, cough. Look right, cough. Put your pants up, young man. Go ahead. It turned into something way different. And if you look at other interviews I've done, we don't have to get more graphic than that. But as I learned that Doc Strauss was having way more relationships with people, where he was asking people to his house, or say if someone, a teammate of mine got poison ivy, a friend of mine from Medina had poison ivy. He come home, he's like, man, I got to call Doc and get some cream for this. He go by Doc's house, and then he finds out, Doc says, hey, drink this orange juice. He don't know when he drinks it, and he finds out he gets woozy. Doc tried to drug him, and there's other people with stories like that where, you find out Doc did more deviant things. And what we come to realize with the head coach, we've been talking with the head coach, Coach Hellickson, is that a lot of people don't know what sexual assault was then and what it is now. Okay. And I'm gonna get a pinch graphic, not too graphic, but I just want to try and explain when a grown-up comes to me, seeing I'm me in my 40s, saying, well, Will, why didn't you just kick his ass? Right. So first of all, I was a tryout walk-on. There's some of the baddest men in the world. Kevin Randleman is the baddest man I've ever been around. Greatest athlete. And he come out complaining about Doc's weird, physicals, and he don't get nothing done. What am I going to get done? He's national champ, right? He's a national champ and the superstar down Ohio State. So I'm just sitting there like, well, what would it look like? And if you look at Doc Strauss, he's like this old white man, gray hair. He looks like, Mr. Smithers from The Simpsons. Like, what would it look like me knocking him out? He's in the training room and I'm running out mad about something. Now I'm kicked out of school, maybe charged with assault, and I'm going back to Tri-C. I know Tri-C is a fine institution now, but back then people didn't want to have to go back to Tri-C if they left college. People would be asking me the same thing. The same people who would be like, why didn't you kick his ass? To, man, Will, why'd you kick that doctor's ass? Why are you back here in Cleveland? You know what I'm saying? It's that same person. So what I also try and explain to people, say if they have a daughter who's 16, 17 and a son who's 16, 17, I say, okay, like I said, I'm getting a little graphic, but not too, but I say, look, what's the difference between a tug or a finger dip? Look at your son and daughter. And then people understand, right? They understand it at that point. And I say, what would you do now? Oh, I'll kill her. They're all ready now, right? So now why is it different for men than it is for women? And so that's where, I explain some of that.
I think you do a great job. And I talk to people all the time in my audience, and, athletes seem to have this aura where it's, they believe you're a superhero. They believe you the baddest dude on the planet. You ain't nobody messing with you. You Superman and Batman. They watch Justice League, and it's like, wow, you guys are, to them, you are the embodiment of a superhero. But one time, I think sometimes I try to explain to people is athletes are humans. Athletes have emotions. Athletes are still put in positions, and power is a thing that is used at all levels, right? Yeah. You are an athlete that has probably dreamed about playing and wrestling at Ohio State and being part of a team. For you, I read a quote, and I think in one of the articles, and you said, for a person who wants to be on a team, he tells you whether or not, the trainer tells you whether you can perform, whether you're able to go perform your duties. If you don't go get a physical, if you ain't going to do this, you're not playing.
And that's a wrap.
That's the power dynamic I think people don't realize when it comes to coaches, trainers, administrators. These people literally have the keys to your future, and anybody would be insane to think that you're going to rock the boat as a 18 to 21-year-old person who has dreams and aspirations. Moving to that, you mentioned some of the individuals that you played with, or some of the, the people that experienced those things too. Was it a thing where it wasn't just one guy would say it? It would be, hey, you ever notice something? Doc is kind of, he does a little extra. Was that a type of thing that you guys talked about and discussed amongst the players?
So we would, what Doc was it's so sad like I say that he was so slick with it. Like, he knew how to just do just enough and irritate you just enough, but he knew the code words. He knew how to say, I'm just being thorough. Like, he would just always find some reason to get an extra grad. Like my sophomore year, my tonsils was messed up, right? And I had to go see him every other week. And then he would do this and he'd just check my lymph node and find some excuse to grab my groin. And then I you push back, man, and he's like, I'm just being thorough. And that was just this constant thing. So he knew how to make you say just enough. So he went out, and I didn't go out and be like, man, Doc grabbed my groin again, or grab my, so we all kind of knew he did these little things, but he also was so weird that he had a locker in our locker room, and he had a locker in the gymnastics locker room. Mind you, their locker room was behind ours, right? So he'd come and shower and stare at you and do and just be around. It just was like, he just knew how to navigate just enough to where he wasn't getting, and he never, really crossed too much of a line in the facility. But what I found out is the line he crossed outside of the facility. So when people always said, in fairness to Jim Jordan and Russ Elkson, we all just knew, we didn't know if those physicals were sexual assault then, but now they would be considered sexual assault, because they told me of instances of when they had weird physicals in the 70s and the 80s, and they just, went along. That you just don't know, because you're trying to trust the medical profession.
And so usually, generally speaking, and I remember there's a case, I believe it was Michigan State's gymnastics. He was a person who, I think you bring up a very good dynamic between men and women. And I think sometimes when you were playing a masculine sport, people believe that, hey, you guys should just be beating these guys up and taking names. Mm-hmm. When I believe the Michigan State case happened, and you had all of these individuals testifying against this person, I think it kind of like really made the common, collective identity of American in sports is to realize, okay, hold on. We might want to really start considering who we're leaving with our athletes, our adults, or any of our student athletes. Do you believe that some of that helped your case? Your case was first, I do believe, correct?
Ours was second. Ours was third, because the Penn State,
okay,
then the Michigan State happened. Yeah.
Okay. And so you talk about it. The Penn State case with Sandusky, the Michigan State with the gymnastics, I forget his name. It escapes.
Larry Nassar.
Yes. And then your case. Can you kind of describe what kind of broke the case at Ohio State, and what started the domino effect for you guys being able to come forward as athletes and tell your story?
Okay, so like it was 3.5 years ago. It was February. I was on this group text message with a fellow old teammate, grad assistant named Mike DeSabato. They're part of the DeSabato wrestling family. They're a big wrestling family in Ohio, based out of Columbus. And he had an apparel deal with Ohio State. He had a company. He had an MMA company. He was sponsoring MMA fighters. He was way ahead of the game. The way when he was talking about image and likeness years before everybody. He had Terrell Pryor in this mode. He had Ohio State in this mode where he was signing ex-athletes to getting their due and things like that post-college and trying to get them something pre-college. But he had like a t-shirt deal that he finagled where Ohio State really couldn't make no money. Like he found a way to get this t-shirt and he was making money off of it. And Ohio State didn't like it. Somehow it crisscrossed. They ended the agreement and he got a little bitter about it. And he had right to. Then what he said, well, I'm gonna bring up this lawsuit against you, this lawsuit, but I'm also gonna bring up Doc Strauss. And then when he started reaching out to us, and we were like, man, like everybody else, man, that was years ago. That was 20-some years. Like, what do you mean, Doc Strauss? And Mike was going through some stuff emotionally. He was having, he's having some issues with depression, and he was having other issues that he admits to now. So at that time, we thought that was just more of what was going on and just being bitter about the deal. But then it kept going a little bit more. He shot this little mini documentary, and the thing where athletes were explaining it. And then what happened was Ohio State challenged them and said, hey, well, we'll get investigators about this. And Perkins Coie came in. And then what happened is they didn't anticipate all these people coming forward. Because then one of my other teammates, Mike Schick, who's been in the media, reached out to me and said, Will, this is legit. Here's this email him. Then when I talked to him, I was like, it was so therapeutic. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking like, what I got to say. Then an hour and a half later, I'm like, wow, I ain't even realized all that. So then what I started doing, I started reaching out to my teammates and reaching out to people and calling people and just be like, hey, fellas, talk to these investigators and maybe talk to a lawyer. And I'm telling you, I told them it was very therapeutic for me, and it's been good. And I was talking to them and found myself talking to 5 people, then 10 people, then 30 people. And by that midsummer, I talked to 50 men about sexual assault. And then it's like, then when a bombshell happened around the 4th of July of that year, like literally 3 years ago last week, where Jim Jordan knew all these things, and then all these people wanted to get Jim Jordan so badly because he was tying in with Trump, and he was possibly going to be the next Speaker of the House if the Republicans won the House. Then as that happened, he reached out to me, finding out, wait, how many people's Will talking to? Can I get people to get on my side and this? And what that did was that splintered the group. So what started happening, he went on Fox News, he bashed us. Donald Trump tweeted about us lying. And then there's a group of people that went left and a group of these people went right. And then we've been splintered fighting these guys ever since. It's just been, so we've just been in this uphill battle of trying to prove what these things are. And then the media wants Jim Jordan so much, and they're forgetting what Ohio State was doing. You know what I'm saying? So it all was just, we just lost all the momentum because of politics.
That, I remember seeing that, and I'm not sure. I want to say that if I saw it correctly, I remember watching it at the time. I was, watching a lot of politics, and I think Jim Jordan was at a state fair, or he was doing rounds, and I remember him going there and them just parking the camera right in front of him saying, what did you know? When did you know? Like it was crazy. And he kind of was like, I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing. Saw anything. And it was like one of these things that it was really strange. And it didn't seem to me, it didn't sit right with me, because I'm like, well, at least at the end, you didn't have to attack the guys. You could have said, hey man, I really sincerely feel bad for anything that happened to any of the guys. Those dudes, I mean, because you think about it, coaches and players in that locker room is a sanctuary in terms of guys feel really bonded in there. So I can understand how that was for you to have that happen. How was it when you reached out and you did find that people were, you talk to them one week and then the next week you seem like they don't recollect what they told you, and it's like they're on the opposite end of the spectrum and you're on was that a shock to see some of the people say, oh, we're on that never happened, or I don't know what y'all talking about?
It was a matter of a weekend, bro. It wasn't weeks. It was a weekend. Jim Jordan called me. I said, can I call you back? And then people were continuing to call me about some of their issues. Like I said, somehow I became the therapist for people and they were calling me. And which, once again, I'm blessed that I was able to do that and help people. But it was a very stressful time, obviously. And then he goes on Fox on the Brett Baer show and then says three people, these three, he tried to challenge people's characters, said this guy's in trouble for this guy's here, this guy's having this emotionally. And he just said, they're lying. He didn't say, he just said, I knew nothing. And no one said he knew. No one was accusing him of sexual assault. That was the thing that it seemed that he was trying to equate, or like no one was trying to put that on. We were just want him to acknowledge us and help and be a part of our team again. And literally, I called one of my teammates from West Virginia who was really good with Jim Jordan, really close with him. And that night, after he saw him on Fox, he was like, "Man, Will, I'm so disappointed in Jim Jordan." Okay, I'm like, "Well, Robbie, will you talk to him?" Boom, he talked to investigators. But then the next day, I get an advocate for Jim Jordan, a guy I thought was a friend of mine, and he used to wrestle Ohio State, and I'm just like talking to him. And every time I'm like, "Hey, I'm bringing something," he said, "Will, that don't got nothing to do. All I'm here to do is protect Jim Jordan." And I was just like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Hey, man, this don't got nothing to do with that." And he's like, "Every time I'm just here to protect Jim Jordan." So that became the narrative. Then we had a group, call with a lawyer and a publicist on a Sunday. And then that Monday, a thing on Facebook came out, said, "We stand with Jim Jordan." And those people I couldn't get on the phone, they now were on that. And then now that splintered the whole group, and it's been splintered ever since. So it was a matter of just a couple days, this playbook. And then now looking back on it, how it went down, when I write my book, I know how it went down now and how this splintered and how it didn't have to happen. And it's so unfortunate because once again, so now Jim Jordan's going to go down as this guy, and he doesn't have to. He really didn't have to. All he had to do was wait for me to call him back, bro. That's all he had to do.
Let me ask you this. There'll be some who hear this and say, well, what did Jim Jordan know? Could he have stopped it? Come on, like he was the assistant. Maybe he didn't really see anything. How much was he involved? Do you believe that, as you said, he knew what was going on, and he willfully either turned the other way or figured that it wasn't his jurisdiction?
It wasn't his jurisdiction. There was nothing Jim Jordan could have done to stop this. He was an assistant coach. He was able to go to school. He wanted to be able to go to school at this. Like there was nothing he could, because this is a 2 and 3 part thing where we were in this facility called Larkin's Hall. Okay. And they built a locker room inside of this, but this was public for everybody. So you had students, faculty, but you had to have a badge to come in there. I think you went to OU, right? Right. So
yes. Yep.
So but y'all had like a public workout place where everyone could kind of go if you had a badge.
Yes.
That's the way ours was, but put our wrestling facility inside of that. But our facility, when we walked out of our locker room, we were in the public going to the showers and the sauna.
Gotcha.
So what the main thing was we had all these perverts that would be stalking us on a regular. I'm talking about daily. They knew when we practiced, we come out, they knew when we showered, we just had these guys stalking us. So that was the thing we all knew and all talked about and all was fighting about. They went to the administrator. Me and one of my team captains went to the AD and tried to address this issue, and they ignored us. Russ went and addressed this issue. Jim addressed this issue. They ignored us. The Doc Strauss thing, I could see how it got slipped up because there really wasn't nothing he could do, because they kept this doctor with us who's been there since 1978, who had smoke around him since 1978, bro. And how do you get rid of something like that? If those stories were able to come out then, hopefully, I hope they would have did something, but they just knew he was a little bit weird, a little off. That's all they really could account to him.
We always say allegedly.
Exactly. Allegedly. Well, he committed suicide now, so it's so there are some demons that he had.
And so let me so let's bring it kind of bring it full term and bring it to today. Today, the Ohio State University did settle on the behalf of the living members of the wrestling, any of the victims that are still living, that went through this trauma. are the guys who deny it happening, or some of your teammates who say they don't know anything about it, are those guys willfully accepting their stipend, or willfully accepting the verdict after Ohio State comes and judges? What's the I guess fallout after that when Ohio State says yes, we do owe these men something?
Well, they're not being honest in their negotiations, actually. So there's probably about close to 500 people that are in this lawsuit. So if you're not in by now, there was a date, you're just not in. They may set some aside for people who come forward later, kind of like what they did with Michigan State. But Ohio State is trying to squeeze us and wait us out, because when they say they settled, they really didn't settle properly, because what they did was they gave a quote unquote $252,000 average, which the Michigan State ladies got $1.3 million average. And what I said is, as I'm trying to compare sexual assault to sexual assault, under Title IX, I don't know, there's no such thing as someone gotten it worse. I just can't accept it as I know the stories of my brothers. So what they're doing now is only one group of maybe 200 people of the 500 have settled. But the way they're trying to have you settle is, here's your quote unquote 252 average, Will. But I mean, I could get $500,000 or I can get $10,000. I won't know, and I have to sign my rights off. I can't tell my story anymore, and I don't know what it is. So how am I supposed to go through all this journey, putting my face out there and say, my life has changed, right?
Forever.
So what if they give me 20 grand? And it's not about the change. Because if they don't write a big check, how are they going to change, G? How are they going to change if they don't have to write a big check? If they get away by screwing us, how is there going to be real change? That's why I'm in it. I'm a high school coach. I protect my kids. I will fight for them. I will fight for young men who are out here. You're not going to get away with that stuff with the kids that I coach. Not at my high school. Anyone that I see, anyone, even kids I don't know, you're not going to get away with that with me. Okay. But how am I going to settle and then not be able to keep telling my story to kids and be able to let them know how to secure themselves, how to be safe? So they got to be accounted for. These things have to pay to account.
Let me. How does that work? One of the things that I always rail against is the judicial system. How is that even possible for you to play Price is Right or some mythical game with whether or not they're gonna give you 10,000 or 250 or $500,000? Yeah. Like it's to me that shows a level of arrogance where there's no attrition there. The attrition it is not to minimalize the damages, right? You can't just say, okay, well, we're just looking to minimalize it. If you've admitted that something took place, at the very minimum, you have at least the responsibility that you have to treat each of those individuals as victims. Right now, these people look like numbers on a page. Tell me how that, and you probably have representation. How is that legal?
Well, the problem is they're racing to the bottom, right? Michigan is going to write a big check because their legislation passed that they can sue through the statute of limitations. Penn State wrote a big check. USC wrote a big check. Michigan State wrote a big check, right? Ohio State's trying to beat them to write the lowest check, whatever it is. I don't know what is in their brain what makes us think that they don't have to make this right, because there are people really hurting out here. I mean, I'm telling you, we had a summit with some of my teammates and guys that didn't know their stories. And I'm like, wow, all these guys talking about they've been in therapy. I know someone who attempted suicide. I know people who have major drug and alcohol issues, rehabs, people who have failed marriages. And it's like, gee, I don't know why I'm a grown up, a single man with no kids. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that. But now talking the last 3 years, I kind of suspect some things. I have some trust issues. I have some issues. I still don't see doctors the way I need to see doctors. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just because I'm a Black man. It's because I have trust issues with doctors. Okay. So I mean, I can count the amount of time I've seen a doctor since I've seen Dr. Strauss on one hand, probably. So it's like, I'm fortunate that I just stay in shape on my own. But imagine if I had these, I don't know. So how are you gonna make this right? I mean, they need to make this right with these people, because people are out here really struggling dealing with this.
You know, I bring this up all the time, and you know, we talk about this. You know, when you're an athlete, and we'll talk about, you know, African American athletes, you know, it's one of the things where not only do you have to, you know, go through school, and you got to make it, and you got to, you know, get people, you know, people still don't understand that scholarships are not a 4-year thing. You have 1-year renewable contracts.
Yeah.
If you got a guy that you like from another state and you're just not good enough, you don't got to moving on. They're moving on. They don't have to. You don't got to miss class. You don't got to get in fights. You don't. All you got to do is not be better than that guy. You know what I mean?
And they're gonna, or they cutting it down. They're like, hey, you know, you was at 100. We got you at 90 this. You know what? We got to get you at 75 this year. Like, yeah, we know the game.
The game. People say, well, you get that free education. Do you know?
No, it ain't. No, it ain't.
Tell people. No. Do you know that you don't sign up for the majors you want to sign up from? When you come and them academic advisors get you, they say, well, what you mean you trying to take accounting and economics?
Right.
During the season, you crazy? You're going to take UC 112 basketball.
Kinesiology, you take, kinesiology, who's run by the gymnastics coach. You're going to take, and then you know what? It's so crazy. The football team, they got to have their classes done by noon. And then they have the facility from noon to 6, 7 o'clock, right? How do you hit 20 hours a week? How do you hit 20 hours a week when you're there between noon and 7, right? Me as wrestlers, look, right? So I'm cutting a bunch of weight. So we have a morning run 2 days a week. Then we have a drill at 10 in the morning. Then we have practice. And then God forbid you overweight, you got to do your own weight cutting workout. You could hit your 20 hours in 2 days, right?
And they're telling you, well, you know, they only got 20 hours a week. And you sitting there telling this person, like, I remember having projects, like we doing major projects. And then they come out with the 75% rule. We're not going to talk about, see, you probably Prop 48. We're not going to talk about that, where they had guys going to school.
Yeah.
You ain't going to do nothing but schoolwork.
Yeah.
It's you're not playing no games, and you have to be done with 75% of your major by your junior year. That's 75%. That's kind of hard to hit when you
and your first 2 years. And in first 2 years, they want you taking your basics just to get used to being a student. All the prerequisites. And it's like, I was blessed to come from a really college education. I'm the youngest of 7, so I kind of came in knowing what the college experience should be. At least there's some people who they the first ones to go to college in their family, so they have no clue, and then now they on their own for the first time. So it's like, man, you know that first. Think about how many people, let alone athletes, who scrub out that first semester, that first half year. I'm gone. I gotta go.
People, especially from major inner cities where we had a bunch of people from Chicago, from that area, and they said, look, I'm the first. I had people that I know had children that were 2, 3 years old. They had fiancés. I know people that would leave and say they would be so sick because they ain't never been out of their neighborhood ever. They've never, we went 2, 3 steps down the street, and that's where we went to another county. That's as far as we went. These guys is getting there. They showing up with the clothes on their back. And the idea and the principle of the nature is that these guys are getting over, that these guys are, and I say, you know, if you're a tennis player, right, you can be 14 years old and be a tennis player in this
for real.
And you can make all the money you want to. You can go play basketball in the Euro leagues. You be 14, 15. Luka Doncic, these guys been pros their whole life. But you telling me that a 19-year-old individual that's a grown man that's been selling jerseys, Terrell Pryor jerseys, and Braxton Miller jerseys, and
Maurice Claret
jerseys. You telling me a 19-year-old kid can't manage his? No, we can't give them no money. They'll kill themselves.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Think about what they did to Cardale Jones. Think about Cardale, right? He had the dream run that year, right? So he can't put together, think about if he could have put together a 12 gauge t-shirt and little thing line. 12 gauge. Imagine what he could have had one of his brothers from Glenville come down, do that. But you know who got to sell 12 gauge t-shirts down at the tailgate? Some kid from Zanesville got to print up a 12 gauge t-shirt, make about 10 grand off of them, right? So what? So that kid. So what are we talking about here? Like they make it also seem that it's only football and basketball. I know people, for instance, okay, there's a kid I used to work with. His name is Logan Stevens, a 4-time state champ from Monroeville, Ohio. He's a 4-time national champ at Ohio State. Okay, after his freshman year, he could start getting camps. People was like trying to offer him $5,000 to do camps. He had to put a cap on the amount that he could have made. He could have made $500,000 each summer. A wrestler, a little wrestler from Ohio. And then we had Olympic gold medalist, Kyle Snyder. He won a gold medal while he was in college. He could have got $2 million off of a shoe deal, like a apparel deal. But no, he had to put his Olympic gold medal money on hold. Anyone who wins a gold medal gets $250,000. He had to wait till he got out of college. So this just ain't a football and basketball thing. This is like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and at the end of the day, yeah, it's an athlete thing. So let's not make it seem like, oh, it's just, no. I know wrestlers that could have been paid. I know plenty of
track athletes.
Track athletes. Come on now.
These are Olympic guys. I know Olympic snowboarders. The guy, I think he was a kicker or he was a skill position.
Yeah, the dude from Colorado. Yeah.
And the thought process is for me, and I want to kind of transition into this. We see with, I think it's July 1st, when athletes were able to finally capitalize off their likeness. And they were able to do that July 1st.
Yep.
When you see that, for me, I think it's a time where I would never see any of that. I thought Pell Grant was the greatest thing in the world.
Right, wasn't it?
Pell Grant, listen, I was sending money back to my mom like, hey, yeah, you got it. We got her a cell phone. I didn't, back then it was calling cards. You had to scratch the calling card. Yeah. So I was like, yo, I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. But I'm just starting to think, and we talk about policy and how policy changes things. And I want to get to this. The legislation and the legislator in California, if it is not for Congress, if it's not for policymakers saying this is unacceptable, we're going to put this in the state law. So USC,
you can't even mess with,
UCLA, those are, you can't touch that. It don't matter what the NCAA said. And when that happened, it opened it up for everybody else, because now Alabama, because now Ohio State, because now Florida State says, well, we can't give them no unfair advantage. They're going to get all the 5 stars.
So take this nugget. Now, Mike DeWine, look how he passed this with an executive order. He was working with the athletic director at Ohio State. They got this passed in 30 days, bro. Like, how do you get that passed in 30 days? Just like that, because Ohio State came to them and said, hey, we need this to have this advantage. But then, you know what Mike DeWine, going back to our lawsuit, he said, hey, if they bring some legislation about that wrestling team being able to sue, I'll sign it. He could have did the same executive order. But Ohio State must have came to them and said, you know what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? In 30 days, they passed this legislation. They ain't never passed anything that quick.
The NCAA then comes out and says, oh no, likeness money. You can do likenesses. We ain't tripping. We ain't tripping no more. Go ahead, fellas. Now it opens the gate for the Supreme Court to look at, and they've already started the legislation. They're looking, well, the rulings that the Supreme Court has given to the NCAA, talking about antitrust laws, are not promising. They have now said that you can't cap the amount of money that you can place on a college education per year. You can't say your scholarship is worth $5,000 and these kids are not being able to profit off of anything. You can't cap the cost of the institutional cost. So therefore, Ohio State can say the cost of our scholarship is $50,000. We're going to give them $50,000 because that's the cost and the price of them going to school. And that's a huge thing. You see now Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12.
They're gone. They're gone. They're gone.
I think it's all ratcheting up to a point where the big boys are saying, "Oh, we don't care. We had this money anyway. We made our money long enough." Yeah,
they're gonna be like, "We're out." Like I always thought one day. I mean, I had this thought 5-10 years ago that one day the SEC, the Big 10, Big 12 just gonna say, "Hey, NCAA, we doing our own thing. We out. We gonna create a pro league, and we gonna pay these kids to do this. We'll financially support the other athletes. Y'all can sanction track and wrestling, whatever, but we doing this on football thing on our own." And the NCAA, and I'm so surprised they did. It was going to happen, but I always thought, I said, when is the SEC and the Big 10 just gonna look at them and say, "This is what we doing"? Like, we don't care what y'all talking about.
When you look at it, and they go to 12 teams, right? And they talk about we talked about, we wanted to go from 4 to 8. And I said, well, hey, playoff. They said, no, we're going to 12. I looked around and I said, the tea leaves are already set. They can already, because the NCAA, let's talk about it. At one point in time, the NAIA or the when you had
Division I AA,
Division I AA, or when you had the NIT. The NIT used to be the big tournament in town. Then guess what? If you have guys and they looked up and they said, we can print money. We can print this money. It's that good.
Tax write-offable money too.
Why do we need? And I've always told them, and people say, I said, it's not that difficult. If you wanted to get things done, you can pay all of those kids. If you told them I paid you $50,000 a year, and they said, well, what about the education? I said, listen, you could put that education in escrow. You don't do nothing, but when you hear this is just like when you look at some of the Mormon schools, Utah, you look at some of the BYUs. Guess what? They still have to go do their pilgrimage and do different things in their outreach. But they got 4 years here.
Or military guys, military guys that go military. That happens in wrestling a lot. People come and go to the military, and then you see like dudes at 26 showing up as freshmen sometimes.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? You're like, wait, who's this grown dude wrestling over here for Purdue?
Like, come on, bro. all these things it's very easy to do. You give them the scholarship, and you say you're gonna go and you're gonna work. We're gonna get, your job is just try to make it. If you don't make it, you've made a base salary of $50,000 and any likenesses that you can do, any endorsement. And when you're done and you finish, you got
5 years.
5 years.
You got 5 years. You
5
years. If you're doing it in that time, it's on you.
And whatever you do, it's on you. So even they got something to fall back on. It's not that difficult.
It ain't.
When you talk about it and moving back, moving towards your background and running for the 11th district. What are some things that you see in your district and some of the things you see in Ohio in general that you believe are policies? We've seen a lot of things out there. We talk about the George Floyd bill. We talk about police reform. We talk about economics. We talk about the price of the inequality of jobs and how people in the African American community are most incarcerated, less. They don't have the same amount of advancement. They earn 40 cents less than on a dollar. Healthcare, access to healthcare. What are some things that you are seeing that you really feel that is tangible that you can help change in the 11th district?
Well, law enforcement reform is very important to me. And when I talk about things like in my area, I've probably been followed or pulled over in every suburb in this area. And since I've been driving, every single one of them. And I go to a story when I say, and I'm in my hometown of Shaker, I get pulled over by this guy. I'm on my way to wrestling practice. And he says, I thought I saw you on your cell phone. I said, no, you didn't. And he said, I thought you saw it put, I said, because I'm on an earpiece. He said, well, I thought I saw you put your phone down. I said, no, you didn't, because it's in my pocket. And then he said, well, Mr. Knight, well, can I just have your diet? He stepped off, came back and said, thanks, Mr. Knight. He didn't even check because he knew he was wrong. He knew he was pulling me up. Because I had this Tahoe. It's one of those, as they call, dope boy looking cars. Every time I'm at a stoplight, people want to buy it from me. And it's clean. I bought it out of Miami. So you know what I'm saying? Right. So it's black. I know what he was thinking it was driving down this main strip.
Right.
And then I do a Facebook post, and then I say, cop pulled me over, explained the story. I said, what if he's having a bad day and I'm having a bad day? Right. And then a friend of mine who's a cop, and it was because he was mad at me, like, Will, you got to tell me, this is what, you got to let me know. He worked for the force too. He said, you got to let me know. And I said, look, I'm not here to get that cop in trouble. I need him to get better. Right. Because you know what's going to happen? What if he got reprimanded? What if he got fired? And then he winds up in another suburb. Now he's mad at Black folks. Now he's mad at somebody. So we have to get that education right. We have to get that portion right. But we're just not pulling someone over for any little, your dim license plate light, which I got pulled over for once. You getting pulled over for everything. Like last year, I mean, I want to salute you and Ken Carmen. I'm going to tell you this. I remember listening to that episode after all that civil unrest last year, and y'all two talking was a very powerful moment. Y'all two talking about y'all issues, and y'all have everything. We have 90% of things in common as Americans. We do. And I had these conversations with people, and I found ourselves, we talking. We got to get back to talking about these things. I'm going to let you know, just like I know you let Ken Carmen, express himself, you got to express yourself without beating each other up and be to have these conversations. And that's what I've been learning on the trail, to listen to people. And I'm not talking at these people. So when it comes to these things, when I talk about economic injustice and what happened to my family, I can tell you, but we survived it because of education. You know what I'm saying? I could have we could be sitting back mad about my grandmother's uncle. I don't know if it's my great uncle getting murdered in Alabama and us losing hundreds of acres, thousands of acres of land. That was generational wealth that we lost. And I'm sure you probably have a story of generational loss. My dad losing his opportunity in bank. That's generational loss. That's wealth that was lost. But we can sit back and be bitter about it, or we get back to work. And how that was, my parents stressed education. I know a lot of people in this moment, like, you don't got to go to college. You got to do this. I think you do. You got to go, even if college ain't all the way for you, you ain't going to know until you go, right? You don't know if college ain't for you until you go, right? You're not going to know if being a plumber is for you until you try it. So I learned contracting and I went to college. I'm a contractor who's a college graduate. What's wrong with that? So we need to make it where we make junior college free or affordable. College, it's going to be tough, college affordable, student loan debt relief, things like that. Support for HBCUs. Those are things we can do, because people are talking about reparations and $2,000 a month and all this. And I'm like, come on now. We know if you're going to ask people to pass a bill to get 42 million folks $1 million, it ain't going to happen. And we saw what happens when we give PPE loans and stimulus checks. People stop working. So if $2,000 a month is coming to you, people ain't going to work. We got to get to work. We got to get people back in this education system. We got to build these schools back. And let's start with education first. It's going to take a long road. It's going to take a long road. But when you can educate yourself and be around educated people, then you can start seeing these things. You see your community, be like, wow, we need to fix this, and this is how we can do it. So it's complex. And those are two of my major platforms, really working to get education and some police reform and law enforcement reform.
You know what I will say, and I want to thank you for saying that. I think you got to have sensible things that you can move with. A lot of times I see guys and their platforms are they're pie in the sky. I know how the game works. We can get an infrastructure bill passed right now.
Right. Which going to help everybody. That's going to help everybody.
Everybody. You talk about kids. You talking about child tax credits. You talk about roads, bridges, renewable energy, green energy, rail system. That ain't got a left or right, a middle, a race on it. That's everybody. Our infrastructure is horrible. But we can't get people to vote on it because they think, oh, well, why infrastructure? That has nothing to do with people. Yeah, it's supposed to be just bridges. I'm like, you
No,
expand your mind, man. Expand. You know, I think I love what you said. I said one of the situations is when you talk about education system. One of the things that as I'm a very big advocate for is student debt relief. And when you got people, regular people don't understand this, right? You got regular kids that are going in debt that will never be able to pay that off. And they have that strapped to their back and they're working 2-3 minimum wage jobs with no benefits, working all the time just to pay student loans. And I'm sitting here looking like, and I'm old enough to remember that we didn't have 3 bailouts.
Yeah,
the car industry,
the housing one,
housing board, and the financial banks. We bailed 3 of them out, and they turned around
trillions, and kept their money.
And they paid dividends and they paid bonuses
to the CEOs, the golden parachutes
who paid to put you. They paying you to put us back in debt. My thing is, if you can't reinvest, if you can't look at a young guy and say, look, you're going to go to school, I'm going to have it affordable. It don't got to be Harvard, but at least give somebody something where you can say, I can go here. It's a free alternative and I can get educated. If you can educate somebody and then bring them back to their community, they can build in their community. But we can't turn around and strap these kids with $250,000 of debt for degrees that are useless and out of date. And you can't even file bankruptcy for student loans in this country. Then you're going to pay them till you die. So my thing is, why can't you look? And there's something the president can do. You could do it by executive order. If I don't know if President Biden is listening, but you can take something off these bills. You can say, I'm going to waive 20. That's just, you don't need votes for that. You don't need none of that. You can say, I'm going to waive 10,000. I'm going to waive 20. We're going to eliminate certain, it's the United States government. They can do that. At the end of the day, I'm passionate about that. And I do like that you've brought it back to something that ain't divisive. That's pie in the sky. Like, hey, let's do reparations.
It's like
that ain't passing, bro.
I always tell people, our most valuable resource is young people. Okay, I'm gonna give you 2 instances of a guy my age and a kid I coached that now he's studying engineering at Cincinnati. So there's this cat that I wrestled with. He wrestled heavyweight at Michigan. Now he's a medical doctor, right? So what he did, I think within his scholarship, I think he came out of Michigan with no debt or low debt, and he went to medical school, became a doctor. And now what he's doing is he created him and some other Black doctors got together and they created this program. His name is Aaron Richardson. You should look him up. Very good brother. And and now what he's doing is him and these other guys, now they opened up a clinic in Detroit or something like that and just showed how, okay, we can give basic health services to the inner city. They just like that gave it back. They probably work for big clinics in these cities, but they probably put part of their time. So now we can go get my blood checked, get some blood work, get my knee checked out. So then I don't got to worry about my heart later 10 years from now. So it's just those little things we can do. I got a little community center at the end of my street. Imagine if there was 2 or 3 doctors that, you know, that just, I can go down there real quick, like, hey man, my hip is bothering me. Can you check this out real quick? Boom. And then I'm gonna come ride my bike, come on back home. And then it's just, those are the things we can do. If we need medical relief for these people. If we can give medical debt relief, you go to school and we can give relief to teachers and you know that they're going to work in inner city schools and these smaller hospitals. Those are things that are real tangible that are going to help our communities. And another thing is, well, I'm telling you about this kid who studied engineering. I bought this 3D printer. And I remember when I first reached out to you, I was showing you, a year or so ago, I showed you this necklace that I made. And then I was like, so what it was I bought a 3D printer, right? So, and I tried to set this thing up and I was like, man, what is this thing, man? And then I went and it was messed up. Something happened where it was messed up. Anyway, took it back. And then I called this kid who was in 9th grade. I said, hey, you want a 3D printer? He said, yeah. I took it to his house. I said, all I need you to do is if I give you an assignment, Just do something for me. And then he went nerded out on this thing, band print stuff, band coming up stuff. He done created so much good stuff and these ideas. And now it's just like his mind. And I'm just like, see, that young person, that's something I couldn't do. Like he was doing something I couldn't do. I invested in a young person and he came up with something. And that was just that simple. That 3D printer cost me $300. You know what I'm saying? That was a $300 investment. Now that kid is inspired by engineering. And you see what I'm saying? Like, I think he wanted to be an engineer before that, but it's still something that just worked. It's a gateway. I invested in this kid in a whole different way. And he got to do some stuff and he got us. And it's a beautiful thing. If more people thought like that, he's going to come back and work in the community. Mm-hmm. He's going to come back and because someone gave to him, right? And he's gonna say, I got to give something back.
I always say it. I mention his name all the time. I'm one of a few African Americans on air. I never take that for granted. Shout out to Andre Knott. Shout out to Gerard Cherry. Shout out to Emmett Golden. Yeah, and I shout out my guy because here's the thing. First of all, I interned with Emmett. Second of all, I listen to Andre Knott all the time.
Yeah, that's my dude. Yep, them were my dudes.
And then I always give credit where credit is due. Without Kendall Lewis,
the BSK man. Like like bless his soul. Like I remember the thing when I first started listening to you, and what the BSK was doing, talking not as an ex-athlete, but intelligently and really fleshing out things in a whole different way. And BSK always talked about offensive line, defensive line, offense. Like you better build it like this.
He had the book. He was coming out with guides. I said,
yes, because it's so great. Because I used to work for a sports agency, right? And little nugget, London Fletcher's in the league because little nugget. Like once again, I'm gonna give you that. I got some off-air stories.
You got some gems for me. Man, I said, I know, yeah.
Yeah, so that he was because my dad God rest my dad. So he used to love him some BSK, and when I hear you, I don't compare you to him, but I see the influence. I see that you can talk I can see how Emmett Golden can talk real intelligently, and then not be offended by the little things that come around. Like just let's talk sport. And the same thing with Andre Knott in baseball. Mm-hmm. Like he's amazing talking baseball, and you don't see whatever anyone else sees. He is so great. And the same thing and Gerard Cherry too, just being like giving you a perspective of a championship athlete and really break nowhere to come down to. He can break down what it's like to be okay. Y'all want to win championships, but I'm gonna tell you what it takes to win a championship. Y'all can talk about this is how we did it. There ain't no changing. This is how we did it.
He told me, I text him, complimentary football, Gbush. Complimentary football. You gotta have it. You out here, you got the stuff on the perimeter. It ain't about that. What I'm gonna say, tight. I was on the train. He got 3 rings. What I'm gonna say? And shout out to him. He's one of a good. When I found out, and these dudes is good dudes in real life. Yeah. When I found out he auctioned, he told me, he said, I auctioned one of my Super Bowl rings off to do work.
The thing for his yeah.
I said, yo, come on. I got champ.
Let me get that ring. Come on.
I got a state championship ring. I can't auction it off. I love y'all. I can't give it up though.
I know. Yeah, but man, y'all McKinley team was the truth though. I don't know if you get rid of that McKinley.
Them boy, and this is why it's so funny with your story. I was at OU, but at Ohio State, I grew up in that era. So before me, that was going down to Ohio State. Che Bryant was down at Ohio State about around this time for McKinley. Then, of course, we had Jamar Martin and the Kenny Petersons and the Mike Dawsons of the world. And C. Grant, Dustin Fox. It seemed like that was a pipeline for about 2-3 years. Everybody from Northeast Ohio was down there. So and then they had the Glenville connection. Glenville. It was so funny because I always compare it and say McKinley started it, but then Glenville kind of took it and was like, oh, like after I got out of school, they was like, oh, but they got these dudes. They got Ted Ginn and his dad, and they doing anything up in Cleveland, and they went all the way.
Wow. But I'm gonna give you a nugget before that. I'm gonna tell you 1996, Nate Clements. When I'm telling you, bro, when I was coming back and everybody was talking about this Nate Clements. I'll be coming back from college, Nate Clements. I said, let me see what this Nate Clements talking about. I saw him when he was a kid playing. I was like, let's see what this skinny kid about now. Bro, like they are playing Chardon. Man, I remember Chardon knew, don't throw that way. Don't throw this way. And then the one time it threw, bam, pick to the house. It's like they told, like they just let you know, like don't throw his way. But they had this playoff game against Euclid. It was pretty much Nate Clements versus Tony Fisher.
Hold on. Now, Tony Fisher, between Ricky, it's like Ricky Powers and Tony Fisher.
Yeah.
Tony Fisher, he went to Notre Dame, right?
To Notre Dame, yeah.
Now, he legend. People's like, yeah, I just doing Tony Fisher.
Yeah. Another line of the Euclid tailbacks, right? Man. And he was like, so they was going back and forth. This team was just back and forth. And before the half, this dude, forget his name, he wound up playing DB at Youngstown State from Shaker, and he hit him so hard on the edge. And then Fisher came back in the second half, not quite right. So what happened was Fisher still broke the first bam like he got one, but then sat out the rest of the game. The ensuing kickoff was to Nate. Nate took it to the house, and then Shaker went on to win this game. But then what happened was the next week they played Ignatius on a frozen field. And there's a rumor that they put a little something on that field. Bro. And that game was like 9-6 because they knew they couldn't stop Nate. So you could tell me whatever, like they knew. They put some on that field in Parma. They put some on that field in Parma, bro.
I tell you what, we was up there in 98. Listen, they had the old school turf. The old Akron rubber bowl, the turf where you used to just fall and rip everything up. You come out with no skin.
I used to feel for them kids when I see them, like, I used to be like, y'all playing on this and playoff football too.
And they would come out there and wet that. They would wet that turf. They would wet the turf, and they come out there and I shout out to them. It was the first team. I always talk about Ignatius all the time because it was the first team I had ever seen where people wasn't going both ways. You know, you come if you did,
they didn't do it.
They like, we got 50 on offense, 50 on defense. They come out with them same vanilla blue jerseys and gold. There. But they had. I always told him, I laugh and joke with him too. I see LaCharles Bentley. Yeah. Hey, LaCharles, you need to stop lifting weights, man. You finished. I be telling them, LaCharles, you finished playing. Stop lifting these weights. The facility out there, you looking big right now. I like it. But LaCharles Bentley was one of the first dudes I seen, like brothers, that was playing for Ignatius. And
that was a trip. I was like, man, where'd they get this dude?
I said, hold on, where'd he go? This ain't Heights or
right. And Shay, so even a couple of brothers believe, like, because Adrian Clark from my high school. Adrian Clark, So AC, my dude. Yeah, Adrian Clark is my dude.
There was man, see, this is crazy. For me, coming up there, and I always tell people from Cleveland. Or from Canton, when you and I see what LeBron say. When LeBron said, used to tell people all the time, no, I'm from Akron, and people used to be upset, and I used to be like, but you got to understand, we from Northeast Ohio, man. We got a complex. Like if you from Canton, you was like, oh, I'm from Canton, but
you ain't from Akron. You ain't from Akron.
But you talking? We wasn't from.
Y'all next door. Y'all next door.
You next door. We don't. And anytime anybody from Canton or anybody from Akron went to Cleveland, because I played basketball in high school. So back then, Theo Dixon, what's the name? One of the coldest.
Theo Dixon from Heights, and then who did in that time? We
that left hand guard. Yeah.
Boy, he from Heights too.
From Heights too.
He got accused of robbing.
Yeah, right.
Allegedly.
We had. I just want to thank you again for taking the time to come out and meet with me, and specifically to talk to my audience. As we said before. I think it's important for athletes to be politically engaged, and I do not believe, and I don't wholeheartedly feel that athletes should just stick to sports. To me, I take that as an offense. As college educated men and people that are invested in the political process that affects their community, why would an athlete not be invested in the political system So I want to thank you for coming to talk to the people who represent you and the people that listen to my show. What are some lasting thoughts and just a thought on where can they reach out to you? Where can they get involved with your campaign? And where is it that they can go visit you and support you? And then two, just some things that you want to have as a lasting voice or the lasting testament or the last thing people know about what you bring to the table and why you are the best person to represent District 11 in the Congress.
Well, let me make sure I'm not muted. Okay, I wasn't sure if I was muted, but that's good. So yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. The basics, my Twitter handle is Will Knight 11th. Then on Instagram, just Will Knight, and Will Knight on Facebook as well. Or you can check out willknightforcongress.com or Will Knight for Congress on Facebook. And the reason why I'm running is there's been a failure of leadership in our region for the last 20 years. And we keep sending the same people back, and we keep the same trajectory going the wrong way. And if it wasn't going to be running for this, I was going to, I want to hold everyone into account. I'm concerned about the mayoral race. I'm concerned about all these state rep races because we have a super majority of Republicans now, and then and we've known to be one of the most corrupt state houses in all the country. And so I just want to fill that void of failed leadership. And the people that I'm running against have been a part of this leadership and been claiming to have success. And we see that that's just not the truth.
Will, I want to thank you for continue to educate your masses and to engage in dialogue about certain things that matter. One of the things that I'm interested in is just not the presidential election. People, that's the thing we look at. But the policies and the things that really change your life and your day-to-day life are your elections in the midterms. Those count. And if you want to look at anything that counts and how big state legislatures are, look at Texas Bill SB 3. Look at voting rights bills. Look at voting rights or restriction bills, I would call them, all across this country. And educate yourself on what it is that affects you, because your rights are only guaranteed as much as you are invested in making and holding people accountable for the people you send to represent you. Will, I want to thank you so much, and we got to do it again. I want to talk to
most definitely.
We got to do that, come back again, and yeah, we'll talk about all kind of things, high school football, all the above. Yeah, man. So I appreciate.
Get out and vote. I'm gonna tell you, get out and vote. The importance. It doesn't matter if you vote Democrat, Republican, Independent. I'm gonna tell you right now. I live on a street of retired people who vote and pay their taxes, and they take care of the people on my street. So they know that we vote. So don't just think, oh, the president, I don't agree. Go out and vote. Because when they know, we do the research. We know who votes out here. So then they come and talk to you. So just go out and vote. Whether you come and vote for a levy, you vote for a student count, for just go out and vote. I'm telling you, it's way more important than you think.
Appreciate you, man, so much. Please go out and do that. We'll catch you next time on X's and O's with the Regular Joes. Gbush here.